What if one narrow strip of water held the power to shake the entire modern world? A place so strategically important that a single crisis here could affect fuel prices, economies, governments, and billions of lives within days. Welcome to the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most dangerous, mysterious, and important waterways on Earth. Hidden between burning deserts, ancient mountains, military bases, and endless shipping lanes, this narrow passage quietly controls the flow of global energy while balancing on the edge of geopolitical tension every single day. At first glance, the Strait of Hormuz looks almost peaceful. Giant ships move slowly across calm blue water, while fishing boats drift beside barren coastlines glowing beneath the desert sun. But beneath this beauty lies a fragile lifeline connecting the modern world together. Nearly 1/5 of the world's oil passes through these waters. Warships patrol the horizon. Fighter jets cross the skies. Ancient trade routes collide with modern military power in a place where history, survival, wealth, and danger all exist side by side. This cinematic 4K documentary takes you deep into the hidden world of the Strait of Hormuz, from ancient Persian trade empires and mysterious islands to futuristic Gulf cities, fishing communities, military tension, environmental risks, and the fragile balance keeping the global economy alive. Because the Strait of Hormuz is not just a waterway, it is one of the last places on Earth where geography still has the power to shape the future of the entire planet. There are places on Earth that quietly shape the fate of entire civilizations, while most of the world barely notices them. The Strait of Hormuz is one of those places. At first glance, it appears almost unreal. A narrow ribbon of deep blue water surrounded by endless desert mountains, scorching heat, rocky coastlines, and giant oil tankers moving silently across the horizon. Yet beneath this harsh beauty lies one of the most fragile and strategically important waterways on the planet. Nearly every nation on Earth is connected to this narrow passage in ways most people never fully realize. Standing here feels like standing beside the pulse of the modern world itself. The first thing you notice when arriving near the Strait of Hormuz is the scale of movement. Massive cargo ships and oil tankers emerge constantly from the horizon like floating cities crossing through one of the narrowest yet busiest shipping lanes on Earth. Day and night, vessel after vessel moves carefully through the strait carrying oil, gas, cargo, and resources powering economies thousands of miles away. And yet the landscape surrounding this global lifeline feels strangely empty. Mountains rise sharply from the coastline beneath skies blurred by heat and dust, while isolated fishing villages sit quietly beside military installations, ports, and industrial terminals. The contrast feels almost surreal. One of the most important waterways in and forgotten. The geography itself explains everything. The Strait of Hormuz connects the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman and eventually the Arabian Sea and Indian Ocean. At its narrowest point, the shipping lanes become astonishingly tight considering the enormous volume of global trade passing through them every single day. This narrow passage acts like a gateway between worlds. Oil from countries across the Gulf must pass through these waters before reaching Asia, Europe, and beyond. Without the Strait of Hormuz functioning normally, global energy markets would immediately face chaos. But arriving here, the importance of the region feels emotional as much as economic. The atmosphere carries tension. Military patrol boats move across the water while surveillance systems monitor the horizon constantly. Fighter jets occasionally roar overhead, while distant naval vessels remain visible against the haze. Even during peaceful moments, there is an unmistakable feeling that the entire world is watching this narrow stretch of sea carefully. The heat intensifies everything. Temperatures rise brutally beneath the desert sun, while salt air and humidity drift inland from the water. The coastline often appears harsh and unforgiving, jagged rocks, barren hills, and endless desert meeting deep blue water beneath cloudless skies. And still, there is extraordinary beauty here. At sunrise, golden light spreads across the strait while mountains glow orange, and enormous ships move silently through calm water reflecting the morning sky. Fishing boats leave small harbors, while seabirds circle above the coastline, and the desert slowly awakens beneath rising heat. The silence during these early hours feels deceptive, because beneath the calm surface, the Strait of Hormuz remains one of the world's greatest geopolitical pressure points. Every movement across these waters matters. Every ship, Military exercise, political statement, or regional conflict can send shockwaves across global markets within hours. Few places on Earth combine beauty and danger so completely. Traveling along the coastline reveals layers of history hidden beneath the modern shipping routes. Ancient forts stand above cliffs, while abandoned watchtowers overlook waters once crossed by Persian traders, pearl divers, and merchant fleets connecting civilizations for thousands of years. The people living beside the strait understand this connection deeply. For generations, fishermen, sailors, traders, and coastal communities survived by adapting to the sea and desert surrounding them. Even now, traditional wooden boats still appear beside giant industrial ports and advanced naval vessels. This collision between old and new defines the entire region. Ancient maritime culture exists beside some of the world's most advanced oil infrastructure and military technology. Remote villages survive in the shadow of global energy networks powering entire continents. At night, the atmosphere becomes even more cinematic. The darkness over the desert contrasts sharply against endless lights from ships crossing the strait. Oil tankers glow like floating cities, while ports and industrial terminals illuminate the coastline beneath distant mountains. Then there are the sounds. Engines humming across the water, wind moving through rocky hills, radio transmissions from passing ships, the distant roar of military aircraft disappearing into the darkness above the Gulf. Everything here feels connected to movement and tension. Because the Strait of Hormuz is not merely a location on a map, it is a fragile artery of modern civilization itself. A narrow waterway carrying the energy, trade, wealth, and political stability of nations across the world. And perhaps what feels most unsettling is how vulnerable it all seems. Looking across the strait, the shipping lanes appear surprisingly narrow compared to their enormous global importance. One crisis, one blockade, one military escalation could affect fuel prices, economies, transportation, and daily life for millions of people far beyond the Middle East. The fragility becomes impossible to ignore. And yet, despite the tension, life continues. Fishermen still launch their boats before sunrise. Cargo ships continue crossing the horizon endlessly. Coastal communities adapt to heat, storms, and uncertainty, while the desert remains silent around one of the busiest maritime corridors on Earth. As evening falls again across the Strait of Hormuz, the mountains darken against fading orange skies, while another endless line of ships moves slowly through the narrow waterway connecting the modern world together. But this strait was important long before oil tankers and military fleets arrived. Beneath the modern tension lies a far older story, one shaped by ancient Persian empires, maritime trade routes, pearl divers, and civilizations that transformed these waters into one of history's greatest gateways between East and West. Long before oil tankers crossed these waters and warships patrolled the horizon, the Strait of Hormuz was already one of the most valuable gateways on Earth. Ancient sailors once navigated these narrow seas, guided only by stars, wind, and memory, while merchants carried silk, spices, pearls, gold, incense, and precious goods between civilizations separated by thousands of miles. Empires rose beside these coastlines because whoever controlled the Strait of Hormuz controlled one of the world's greatest maritime crossroads. Even today, standing beside these waters feels like standing at the intersection of history itself. The sea shaped life here from the very beginning. The harsh desert landscape surrounding the strait offered limited resources, but the water created opportunity. Fishing villages, trading ports, and maritime settlements slowly emerged along the coastline while sailors learned how to survive the dangerous currents, storms, and extreme heat of the region. Over time, these waters connected ancient civilizations together. Persian merchants sailed toward India and East Africa, while Arab traders crossed the Gulf carrying goods between Mesopotamia, Arabia, and Asia. Long before modern globalization existed, the Strait of Hormuz functioned as a vital artery of international trade. The ancient Persian empires understood its importance clearly. Powerful dynasties rising across the Iranian plateau viewed the Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz not merely as waterways, but as strategic lifelines connecting their empires to the wider world. Persian influence expanded across maritime trade routes, while ports along the Gulf became centers of wealth, culture, and commerce. Ships once carried extraordinary cargo through these narrow waters. Silk from China, spices from India, pearls from the Gulf, ivory from Africa, precious stones, perfumes, textiles, and rare woods all moved through the region, while merchants built fortunes controlling maritime trade between East and West. One of the most important historical centers in the region was Hormuz Island. For centuries, the island became legendary for its strategic location and immense trading wealth. Travelers from distant civilizations described Hormuz as one of the richest commercial hubs in the known world. The island itself appears almost surreal. Red mountains rise above the coastline, while strange mineral-rich landscapes glow beneath intense desert sunlight. The colors of the island feel otherworldly: deep reds, oranges, whites, and volcanic rock formations shaped by heat and time. Yet behind this beauty stood enormous strategic importance. Merchants passing through the strait often stopped at Hormuz, turning the island into a center of maritime trade, taxation, diplomacy, and political power. Wealth from international commerce transformed isolated desert coastlines into thriving economic centers centuries before modern oil existed. The sea also created a legendary pearl diving culture throughout the Gulf region. Before oil reshaped the Middle East, pearls represented one of the region's greatest sources of wealth. Divers risked their lives descending deep beneath the water without modern equipment, searching for oysters capable of containing valuable natural pearls. The work was brutal. Divers tied stones to their bodies to descend faster, while holding their breath for astonishing lengths of time beneath dangerous waters filled with sharks, currents, and exhaustion. Entire coastal communities depended on pearl harvesting for survival. The emotional relationship between people and the sea became deeply woven into local culture. Songs, traditions, stories, and maritime rituals passed through generations, shaped by fishing, diving, trade, and survival beside the Gulf's harsh waters. Even today, traces of this ancient maritime culture survive despite the enormous industrial transformation of the modern region. Then, foreign empires arrived seeking control of these waters. The Portuguese Empire entered the Gulf during the 16th century, recognizing immediately that controlling the Strait of Hormuz meant controlling vast commercial wealth. Portuguese forces captured strategic ports and built powerful forts overlooking key maritime routes. Ruins from that era still remain. Ancient fortresses stand above coastlines where cannons once defended shipping routes connecting Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. The struggle for control of the strait became part of a larger global contest between rising empires competing for dominance over international trade. Eventually, Persian rulers pushed foreign powers back, while regional influence shifted repeatedly between empires, dynasties, and trading powers. Yet throughout every political transformation, the strategic importance of the Strait of Hormuz never disappeared. Because geography cannot be changed. This narrow passage remained the natural gateway connecting the Gulf to the wider oceans beyond. Every empire, merchant fleet, and maritime civilization crossing the region eventually understood the same reality. Control of these waters meant power. Travelers visiting the region centuries ago often described the atmosphere with fascination and fear. The heat, barren coastlines, isolated islands, and dangerous waters created an environment both beautiful and unforgiving. That atmosphere still exists today. Even with modern ports, oil terminals, and military technology surrounding the strait, the landscape itself continues feeling ancient. Desert mountains still rise above narrow shipping routes, while traditional fishing boats cross waters once sailed by merchants thousands of years ago. At sunset, history feels especially visible here. Ancient forts overlook glowing coastlines, while giant cargo ships move silently through waters that once carried Persian traders and pearl divers beneath the same desert skies. The modern world may view the Strait of Hormuz mainly through the lens of oil and geopolitics, but its story began long before energy markets and naval fleets. For thousands of years, these waters connected civilizations, shaped empires, created fortunes, and transformed isolated desert coastlines into one of the most important maritime crossroads in human history. And in the modern era, that importance would grow beyond anything the ancient world could ever have imagined. Because beneath the desert surrounding the Gulf lay enormous reserves of oil and natural gas capable of powering entire civilizations, turning the Strait of Hormuz into the single most important energy chokepoint on Earth. Every morning, before most of the world fully wakes up, An endless procession of giant ships begins moving through one of the narrowest and most important waterways on Earth. These vessels carry the fuel powering cities, industries, transportation systems, and economies across entire continents. Without this narrow stretch of sea, modern civilization would slow almost instantly. The Strait of Hormuz is no longer simply a historic trade route between ancient empires. It became the beating heart of the global energy system itself, a fragile maritime corridor upon which billions of lives quietly depend every single day. The transformation began beneath the deserts surrounding the Gulf. For centuries, the region survived through fishing, trade, pearl diving, and maritime commerce. Then, enormous oil reserves were discovered beneath the sands and beneath the sea itself. Suddenly, remote coastlines, once known mainly to sailors and merchants, became some of the most strategically valuable places on Earth. Oil changed everything. Cities expanded rapidly, while ports, pipelines, refineries, and industrial terminals appeared across the Gulf. International companies arrived alongside engineers, workers, diplomats, and military forces. What had once been isolated desert kingdoms transformed into global energy giants within only decades. And all of it depended on one narrow passage. The Strait of Hormuz became the gateway through which Gulf oil reached the rest of the world. Tankers loaded in ports across the region must pass through these waters before entering the Arabian Sea and continuing toward Asia, Europe, and beyond. The numbers are staggering. Roughly 1/5 of the world's oil consumption moves through the Strait of Hormuz. Every day, enormous tankers transport millions of barrels of crude oil and liquefied natural gas through shipping lanes that appear astonishingly narrow considering their global importance. Standing near the strait, the scale feels almost unbelievable. Massive oil tankers emerge continuously from the horizon, each one carrying enough energy resources to affect entire economies. Some vessels stretch hundreds of meters long, moving slowly through the water like floating industrial cities beneath the desert heat. The atmosphere surrounding the shipping lanes feels strangely tense. Every vessel follows carefully monitored routes, while naval patrols and surveillance systems observe the movement constantly. The global economy depends so heavily on uninterrupted shipping here that even minor disruptions immediately trigger concern across international markets. Because there are few alternatives. The geography of the Gulf leaves limited options for exporting energy resources without passing through Hormuz. Pipelines exist, but they cannot fully replace the enormous volume of oil and gas moving through the strait daily. This vulnerability makes the region extraordinarily fragile. A single military incident, political crisis, or shipping disruption can immediately affect global oil prices. Markets react within minutes because the Strait of Hormuz functions almost like the central valve of the world's energy supply. The ports surrounding the Gulf reveal this importance clearly. Enormous industrial complexes operate day and night loading crude oil, refining fuel, storing liquefied natural gas, and coordinating maritime traffic flowing toward global markets. Cranes tower above the coastline, while pipelines stretch across deserts connecting oil fields to export terminals beside the sea. At night, these industrial zones glow intensely against the darkness. Refineries burn with orange flames, while ships wait offshore beneath endless lights reflecting across the water. The scene feels futuristic, yet strangely fragile. A vast industrial system operating continuously beside barren desert landscapes. Countries throughout the Gulf built immense wealth from these energy exports. Modern skylines rose from the desert while highways, airports, artificial islands, and financial centers transformed cities once sustained mainly by trade and fishing. The economic growth became almost unimaginable in speed and scale. Yet behind the wealth remains constant uncertainty. Because the same geography creating immense strategic value also creates enormous vulnerability. The Strait of Hormuz remains narrow, exposed, and politically sensitive. Every nation connected to global energy markets understands how dangerous instability here could become. The ships crossing the strait represent more than cargo. They carry electricity for cities, fuel for transportation, energy for factories, airlines, shipping fleets, and modern infrastructure worldwide. Millions of ordinary people living far from the Middle East rely unknowingly on safe passage through these waters every day. and the captains navigating the strait understand the risks clearly. Passing through Hormuz requires precision and caution. Heavy maritime traffic, military presence, harsh weather conditions, and geopolitical tension create an atmosphere unlike ordinary commercial shipping routes. Some sailors describe the experience as strangely psychological. The water itself often appears calm and beautiful beneath the desert sun, yet everyone on board understands they are crossing one of the world's most politically sensitive maritime corridors. The importance of Asia especially reshaped the region further. Countries like China, India, Japan, and South Korea became heavily dependent on Gulf energy exports. As Asian economies expanded rapidly, tanker traffic through the Strait of Hormuz increased enormously. The result is a waterway connecting global superpowers economically, even when politics remain divided. American naval fleets patrol the region, while Chinese industries rely heavily on its oil exports. European economies monitor every crisis closely, while Gulf nations balance diplomacy, security, and energy production simultaneously. Very few places on Earth concentrate so much global importance into such a physically narrow space. And despite the industrialization surrounding the Gulf, the environment itself remains harsh and ancient. Desert mountains still overlook shipping lanes, while fishermen continue launching traditional boats beside some of the world's largest energy terminals. At sunrise, the contrast feels almost surreal. Golden light spreads across calm water, while giant tankers move silently past rocky coastlines shaped by centuries of maritime history. The sea appears peaceful, despite carrying the economic pressure of modern civilization itself. Then the heat rises again. Engines roar through ports while cranes load cargo endlessly, and military patrols continue monitoring the horizon. The modern world keeps moving because these waters remain open. But the more essential the Strait of Hormuz became to global energy, the more dangerous the region also became politically and militarily, because every global power understood the same terrifying reality. Whoever threatens this narrow passage holds the ability to shake the entire world economy within days. There are few places on Earth where a single mistake could send shockwaves across the entire planet within hours. The Strait of Hormuz is one of those places. Beneath the beauty of calm blue water and desert mountains lies a permanent atmosphere of tension, surveillance, and military readiness. Warships patrol the horizon. Fighter jets cross the skies. Submarines move silently beneath the sea, while radar systems scan every ship entering the narrow channel. Here, global powers watch one another constantly inside one of the world's most dangerous geopolitical pressure points. The Strait of Hormuz is not only a trade route, it is a fragile front line where diplomacy and conflict exist side by side every single day. The geography itself creates vulnerability. At its narrowest point, the shipping lanes passing through the strait become astonishingly tight, considering the enormous amount of oil and cargo flowing through them daily. Tankers carrying energy resources vital to the global economy move through waters where military confrontation always feels possible. This narrowness changes everything, because unlike open oceans, there is little room for error here. Commercial vessels, naval fleets, patrol boats, helicopters, drones, and surveillance systems all operate within close proximity beneath intense political pressure. The result feels almost surreal. One moment the sea appears calm beneath endless desert skies. The next moment, military aircraft roar overhead while armed patrol boats race across the water near giant oil tankers moving slowly through the channel. The Strait of Hormuz became heavily militarized because every major power understands its global importance. The United States maintains a major naval presence in the region to protect shipping routes and deter threats against international trade. American aircraft carriers, destroyers, submarines, and surveillance systems operate throughout the Gulf, monitoring activity constantly. At the same time, regional powers also maintain enormous military capabilities surrounding the strait. Missile systems hidden in coastal mountains, naval bases, fast attack boats, drones, radar stations, and fortified islands all form part of a tense strategic environment shaped by decades of rivalry and mistrust. The atmosphere here is psychological as much as physical. Captains navigating commercial vessels often know they are being watched continuously by multiple governments and military forces. Every unusual movement across the water can trigger concern, especially during periods of political crisis. And crises happen frequently. The Strait of Hormuz has witnessed tanker seizures, naval standoffs, military exercises, drone incidents, sabotage accusations, and confrontations capable of escalating dangerously within hours. Even rumors alone can affect oil prices globally. The world reacts nervously because the stakes are enormous. If shipping through Hormuz were disrupted significantly, global energy supplies could face immediate shock. Fuel prices would rise, markets would panic. Economies already vulnerable to instability could face severe consequences rapidly. This reality transformed the strait into one of the world's most closely monitored waterways. Advanced surveillance systems track vessel movements continuously, while satellites observe activity from space. Naval commanders study shipping patterns, while intelligence agencies analyze every regional development carefully. Yet despite all the technology, uncertainty remains constant. Because military power here exists inside an extremely confined environment where geography limits reaction time and increases the danger of miscalculation. Fast-moving patrol boats, drones, submarines, and missile systems all operate within a narrow corridor crowded with civilian shipping traffic. The tension becomes especially visible during military exercises. Warships maneuver across the Gulf while helicopters circle overhead, and missile tests demonstrate strategic capabilities to rivals watching closely. Public displays of force send messages far beyond the region itself. The islands scattered around the Strait of Hormuz add even more strategic complexity. Some contain military facilities, radar systems, airstrips, and fortified positions overlooking critical shipping routes. Control of these islands carries enormous geopolitical importance because they provide visibility across the narrow waterway. At night, the atmosphere feels even more intense. Warships appear as glowing silhouettes against dark water, while aircraft lights cross the skies above oil tankers, moving silently through the shipping lanes. Radio transmissions echo across the sea while surveillance systems continue operating without pause. Sailors crossing the strait often describe the experience as strangely nerve-wracking. The route itself may appear calm physically, but everyone on board understands they are moving through one of the world's most politically sensitive zones. Military vessels remain visible nearby, while security warnings and navigation instructions constantly remind crews of potential risks. The surrounding deserts contribute to the atmosphere as well. Rocky mountains rise above coastlines, hiding military infrastructure, missile positions, radar installations, and strategic observation points invisible from the sea. The barren landscape feels silent, yet beneath that silence lies extraordinary military preparation. History also casts a long shadow across the region. The Iran-Iraq War during the 1980s transformed the Gulf into a dangerous battleground where oil tankers became targets during what became known as the Tanker War. Ships burned across the Gulf while naval escorts attempted to protect commercial traffic moving through Hormuz. That memory still influences military strategy today. Every government involved understands how quickly regional conflict could threaten global trade and energy markets. The fear of escalation never fully disappears because the economic consequences would affect far more than the Middle East alone. And yet, life continues beside this tension. Fishermen still launch their boats before sunrise, while cargo ships maintain schedules and coastal communities adapt to the constant military presence surrounding them. For people living here, the atmosphere of uncertainty became part of everyday reality. Perhaps that is what makes the Strait of Hormuz feel so uniquely unsettling. The beauty of the landscape contrasts sharply against the invisible pressure surrounding it. Calm water hides geopolitical tension, capable of influencing billions of lives far beyond the Gulf itself. At dawn, the sea glows peacefully beneath orange desert light, while giant tankers continue moving carefully through the narrow corridor. But beneath that calm surface remains a permanent understanding shared by every nation watching these waters. The Strait of Hormuz is not merely a shipping route. It is one of the most fragile strategic lifelines of the modern world, balanced constantly between stability and the possibility of sudden crisis. While the world watches the Strait of Hormuz for oil tankers, military fleets, and geopolitical tension, another quieter story unfolds beside these waters every single day. Long before global energy markets transformed the Gulf into a strategic battlefield, families here survived through fishing, sailing, pearl diving, and life shaped entirely by the sea. Even now, beyond the massive ports and naval patrols, fishermen still launch wooden boats before sunrise, while dock workers, sailors, and coastal communities continue living beneath the shadow of one of the world's most important waterways. Their lives remain deeply connected to the sea, the heat, and the uncertainty surrounding the Strait of Hormuz. Before dawn, the coastline feels strangely peaceful. The desert remains dark, while warm wind drifts across the water carrying the smell of salt, fuel, and fishing nets. In small harbors scattered along the coast, fishermen prepare quietly beneath weak yellow lights while the modern world still sleeps. Engines start slowly. Wooden boats move away from shore toward open water, while enormous cargo ships glow faintly on the distant horizon, like floating cities crossing the strait through the darkness. The contrast feels almost unreal. Traditional fishing culture continues surviving beside one of the largest industrial shipping corridors on Earth. For generations, the sea provided survival here. Long before oil wealth reshaped the Gulf, coastal communities depended on fishing and pearl diving to endure the brutal climate surrounding the Strait of Hormuz. Families learned how to navigate dangerous waters, unpredictable storms, extreme heat, and isolation using knowledge passed between generations. That connection to the sea still remains deeply emotional. Older fishermen speak about currents, tides, winds, and seasons almost as living forces rather than scientific patterns. The Gulf is respected because it can provide life one day and take it away the next. The heat defines everything. By midday, temperatures become overwhelming beneath cloudless skies, while humidity rises heavily from the water itself. Working outside for long hours demands extraordinary physical endurance. Dock workers continue loading supplies while sailors repair equipment beneath relentless sunlight reflecting off metal, concrete, and sea. The ports surrounding the strait never truly stop moving. Cargo containers stack endlessly beside giant cranes, while tanker crews coordinate departures around strict shipping schedules. Workers from many different countries live and labor together here, creating a strange blend of languages, cultures, and routines connected by maritime life. Some spend months at sea crossing between continents. Inside giant cargo vessels, crews operate engines, navigation systems, and loading operations while passing repeatedly through the Strait of Hormuz. For sailors, the region carries both fascination and anxiety because of its political sensitivity and strategic importance. Crossing the strait requires constant attention. Heavy shipping traffic, military patrols, restricted zones, and rapidly changing conditions create a unique atmosphere compared to ordinary commercial routes. Captains monitor radio communications carefully while navigating one of the world's most closely watched waterways. Yet for small fishing communities, daily life often feels surprisingly traditional, despite the global significance surrounding them. Men repair nets beside the shore, while children play near harbors filled with small boats painted in fading colors. Families gather during evenings while older generations tell stories about storms, diving expeditions, and life before the oil era transformed the Gulf forever. In some coastal villages, the architecture itself reflects centuries of adaptation to the climate. Simple buildings designed for ventilation and shade stand beneath barren hills, while narrow streets protect against the heat and wind. The environment shaped human survival here long before modern air conditioning and industrial wealth arrived. The sea also creates constant uncertainty. Storms can appear suddenly, while rough water and powerful currents make fishing dangerous, especially for smaller vessels. Sailors living beside the strait understand how quickly conditions can change beneath the seemingly calm surface of the Gulf. And then there is the political uncertainty. People living near the Strait of Hormuz know their home exists at the center of global tension. News about military confrontations, sanctions, or regional crises immediately affects daily life, fuel costs, shipping activity, and economic stability. Some families remember periods when conflict spread directly into the Gulf itself. During the tanker war of the 1980s, explosions, attacks, and fear transformed these waters into a dangerous battlefield. Ships burned across the horizon while coastal communities watched military escalation unfold around them. That memory still lingers quietly. Even during peaceful periods, many residents understand how fragile stability remains here. The presence of warships, surveillance aircraft, and military patrols became part of the normal landscape surrounding everyday life. Yet despite the tension, moments of extraordinary beauty continue shaping the region. At sunset, fishermen return slowly toward shore, while the desert mountains glow red and orange beneath fading light. Seabirds circle above the water, while giant tankers move silently across the horizon through calm evening seas. The atmosphere feels timeless. Traditional boats drift beside modern industrial ports, while ancient maritime culture survives beneath the shadow of globalization and geopolitics. Few places reveal the collision between old and new so clearly. Night transforms the coastline again. Ports blaze with artificial light, while ships continue crossing the strait beneath dark skies. Workers remain active through the night, loading cargo, maintaining vessels, monitoring shipping routes, and preparing for another endless cycle of movement across the Gulf. Meanwhile, in quiet fishing villages beyond the industrial terminals, life slows beneath the stars, while warm wind moves through narrow streets carrying the distant sound of engines across the water. Perhaps that is what makes the Strait of Hormuz feel so emotionally complex. For the outside world, it represents oil, military power, and global economics. But for the people living beside it, the strait remains something far more personal. It is survival. It is memory. It is work, fear, tradition, family, and identity, shaped by generations who learned how to endure one of the harshest and most strategically important environments on Earth. And beyond the ports and villages lies another powerful force shaping every aspect of life here: the brutal geography and climate surrounding the Strait of Hormuz, where desert mountains, scorching heat, salt air, and violent storms create one of the harshest natural environments connected to any major trade route in the world. At first glance, the Strait of Hormuz appears calm, almost peaceful. Blue water stretches beneath bright skies, while ships move steadily across the horizon between rugged coastlines and distant mountains. But beneath this beauty lies one of the harshest environments connected to any major waterway on Earth. The region surrounding the strait is shaped by extreme heat, barren deserts, violent storms, salt-heavy air, and rocky landscapes that test both nature and human survival constantly. Everything here feels exposed to the elements. The sea, the ports, the villages, even the giant industrial infrastructure all exist under the relentless pressure of geography itself. The heat defines life from the very beginning. During summer, temperatures across the region can rise to unbearable levels, while humidity from the Gulf creates suffocating conditions along the coast. The air feels heavy, thick with salt and dust beneath a sun so intense that metal surfaces burn to the touch within minutes. By midday, the landscape often appears almost lifeless. Roads shimmer beneath waves of heat, while mountains fade into the haze, and the desert itself seems frozen beneath endless sunlight. Workers move slowly through ports and industrial zones while fishermen search constantly for shade whenever possible. The sea offers little relief. Warm water temperatures and heavy humidity create an atmosphere that can feel exhausting even near the coastline. The Gulf traps heat, turning the surrounding environment into one of the most physically demanding climates in the world. And yet people adapted to this environment for thousands of years. Long before modern technology arrived, coastal communities learned how to survive through architecture, clothing, sailing techniques, and daily routines shaped entirely around the climate. Traditional homes used thick walls, narrow streets, and natural ventilation to reduce heat, while work schedules followed the rhythm of sunrise and sunset. The desert surrounding the Strait of Hormuz feels ancient and unforgiving. Rocky mountains rise suddenly above the coastline while barren valleys stretch inland beneath endless dry skies. Vegetation remains sparse across much of the landscape, creating a harsh beauty shaped more by stone, wind, and sunlight than by greenery. Some mountains appear almost alien. Sharp ridges and jagged cliffs glow red, orange, and brown beneath the desert light, while layers of exposed rock reveal geological formations shaped across millions of years. The region feels raw and elemental, stripped down to heat, stone, and sea. Then there are the islands scattered across the Gulf. Many appear isolated and mysterious, surrounded by brilliant blue water contrasting sharply against barren volcanic terrain. Some islands contain dramatic salt formations, caves, cliffs, and strange mineral landscapes colored by iron, rich rock, and extreme weather conditions. Hormuz Island feels especially surreal. Its mountains glow deep red beneath the sun, while strange rock formations and colorful mineral deposits create landscapes that seem closer to another planet than Earth itself. The island's beauty feels haunting because of how harsh and exposed the environment remains. But the climate here is not only about heat. Powerful winds and seasonal storms also shape life across the Strait of Hormuz. Sudden weather changes can transform calm seas into dangerous waters, while strong currents and rough waves create serious risks for smaller vessels. Dust storms add another layer of unpredictability. Walls of sand and dust sometimes sweep across the region, reducing visibility dramatically while coating ports, ships, roads, and cities beneath fine desert particles carried by intense winds. The atmosphere during these storms feels almost apocalyptic. Sailors crossing the strait learn quickly to respect these conditions. Navigating through heavy shipping traffic becomes even more dangerous during poor visibility or rough weather. Giant tankers require careful coordination, while smaller boats risk being overwhelmed by waves, currents, or sudden storms. The salt air itself slowly destroys everything exposed to it. Metal structures corrode constantly, while ships, pipelines, ports, and industrial facilities require endless maintenance simply to survive the environment surrounding the Gulf. Nature attacks infrastructure continuously here through heat, humidity, wind, and salt. Even modern cities struggle against the climate. Glass skyscrapers, highways, ports, and industrial zones depend heavily on air conditioning, desalination plants, and engineered infrastructure to remain functional beneath the brutal desert conditions. Without modern technology, large-scale urban life would be nearly impossible across much of the region. Fresh water itself remains precious. Many Gulf cities depend on desalination plants converting seawater into drinking water because the surrounding deserts provide extremely limited natural freshwater sources. The environment constantly reminds people how fragile survival can become here. Yet despite its harshness, the landscape carries extraordinary beauty. At sunrise, golden light spreads across rocky coastlines while mountains emerge slowly from the darkness, and the sea reflects shades of blue, silver, and orange beneath calm morning skies. During evening, the atmosphere becomes even more cinematic. The desert cools slightly, while giant ships move silently across glowing water beneath red skies, and distant industrial lights begin illuminating the coastline. The contrast between nature and industry feels especially powerful at these moments. Then, night arrives. Temperatures fall slowly, while stars appear above the mountains, and warm wind drifts across silent coastlines, carrying the sound of waves, engines, and distant port activity through the darkness. The isolation becomes easier to feel after dark. Beyond the shipping lanes and industrial terminals, enormous stretches of desert remain empty and silent beneath endless skies. These landscapes shaped human history here for centuries because survival always required resilience, adaptation, and deep respect for the environment itself. Perhaps that is what makes the Strait of Hormuz feel so emotionally intense. The region sits at the center of global trade, military power, and modern energy systems, yet the surrounding environment remains deeply ancient and unforgiving. Nature still dominates the landscape despite all the ships, ports, and technology crossing these waters every day. And hidden among these deserts, islands, and rocky coastlines are places rarely seen by outsiders. Mysterious islands, abandoned forts, isolated military zones, and forgotten landscapes carrying secrets buried beneath centuries of maritime history and geopolitical tension. Far beyond the crowded shipping lanes and giant oil tankers, the Strait of Hormuz hides another world entirely. A world of isolated islands, abandoned forts, silent military zones, volcanic landscapes, and forgotten coastlines shaped by centuries of conflict, trade, and survival. Many travelers crossing the Gulf never see these places. Some remain difficult to access. Others are surrounded by political sensitivity, military restrictions, or harsh natural conditions that keep outsiders away. Yet scattered across the waters surrounding the strait are some of the most mysterious and visually surreal landscapes in the Middle East, places where history, isolation, and secrecy blend together beneath endless desert skies. The islands appear suddenly from the sea. Rocky mountains rise sharply above brilliant blue water, while barren coastlines glow beneath intense sunlight. From a distance, many of these islands look almost lifeless, isolated pieces of stone surrounded by one of the world's busiest maritime corridors. But each island carries its own story. Some once controlled ancient trade routes. Others became military outposts, guarding the narrow passage between the Gulf and the open ocean. A few remain almost untouched, shaped more by wind and salt than by human civilization. Among the most extraordinary is Keshem Island. The island feels enormous, rugged, and strangely cinematic. Vast cliffs rise above narrow coastal roads, while deep canyons cut through barren terrain shaped by millions of years of geological change. Villages appear isolated beneath towering rock formations, while fishermen continue traditional life beside waters crossed daily by giant modern tankers. One of Keshem's most haunting locations is the Valley of Stars. Wind erosion carved the landscape into towering pillars, strange formations, and narrow passages that look almost supernatural beneath moonlight. Local legends claim the valley was created when a star crashed into the earth centuries ago. At night, the silence there feels overwhelming. Wind moves through the rock formations while shadows stretch across the desert beneath skies filled with stars untouched by city lights. The isolation creates a feeling difficult to describe, as if the modern world suddenly disappeared entirely. Nearby lies Hormuz Island, one of the strangest islands in the Gulf. The island's red mountains and mineral-rich soil create landscapes unlike almost anywhere else on Earth. Beaches shimmer with volcanic colors, while cliffs glow deep orange beneath the desert sun. Some sections of coastline appear painted rather than natural. Yet beneath the beauty lies centuries of strategic importance. Ancient fortresses still overlook the coastline where Portuguese forces once built defenses to control maritime trade through the Strait of Hormuz. Ruins of these forts remain standing against the sea, reminders of how empires fought fiercely for dominance over these waters. Walking through the abandoned stone corridors feels eerie. Cannons once pointed toward the horizon where merchant fleets crossed the Gulf carrying spices, silk, gold, and pearls between civilizations. Now only wind and waves move through the crumbling walls beneath the heat. Some islands carry even greater secrecy. Military installations, radar systems, restricted zones, and hidden facilities remain scattered throughout the region because of the strait's enormous geopolitical importance. Certain coastlines are heavily monitored, while naval activity remains visible from the sea. The atmosphere around these zones feels tense and mysterious. Warning signs appear near isolated coastal areas, while patrol vessels monitor surrounding waters constantly. Satellite dishes, radar towers, and military outposts emerge unexpectedly from barren desert hills overlooking the shipping lanes below. And still, ordinary life continues nearby. Fishing villages survive beside strategic military infrastructure, while children play near coastlines watched carefully by governments and naval forces. The contrast between daily life and geopolitical tension feels constant throughout the region. There are also forgotten places hidden along the coast. Abandoned settlements slowly disappearing beneath sand and salt air. Old watchtowers standing alone above empty cliffs. Remote beaches untouched by tourism, where only seabirds and fishing boats break the silence. Some coastlines feel almost prehistoric. Sharp volcanic rock rises directly from turquoise water, while caves and hidden inlets remain accessible only by small boats navigating carefully through rough currents and isolated channels. The sea itself adds to the mystery. Beneath the surface, underwater landscapes hide coral reefs, shipwrecks, and remnants of centuries of maritime trade crossing the Gulf. Ancient sailors, pearl divers, merchants, and naval fleets all passed through these waters long before the modern world arrived. At sunset, the islands become especially haunting. Red mountains glow beneath fading light, while abandoned forts cast long shadows across empty beaches, and giant oil tankers move silently through the distance beyond isolated coastlines. Then darkness transforms everything. Military lights blink across remote islands, while ships cross the horizon beneath black skies, and waves crash quietly against volcanic cliffs, hidden far from the world's attention. The silence feels almost unsettling, because beneath it lies enormous strategic importance. Few places combine beauty and secrecy so completely. The Strait of Hormuz appears constantly in headlines about oil, military tension, and global trade, yet its hidden landscapes remain largely unknown to outsiders. These islands carry traces of ancient empires, colonial struggles, maritime legends, and modern geopolitical rivalry, all layered together beneath one of the harshest climates on Earth. Perhaps that is why the region feels so psychologically powerful. Isolation shapes the atmosphere. The desert creates silence. The sea creates uncertainty. And the constant presence of military power reminds everyone that these beautiful landscapes exist beside one of the most fragile strategic corridors in the modern world. But beyond the mystery and beauty lies another growing danger, one that threatens not only the future of the Strait of Hormuz, but the fragile balance between industry, marine life, climate, and survival itself. From above, the Strait of Hormuz can appear almost perfect. Deep blue water cuts between rugged desert coastlines, while giant ships move slowly beneath endless skies. Sunlight reflects across the Gulf with breathtaking beauty, hiding the enormous pressure placed upon these waters every single day. Because beneath the surface of this global shipping corridor lies a fragile ecosystem increasingly threatened by oil pollution, industrial expansion, climate change, and the constant risk of environmental disaster. The same waterway powering much of the modern world is also becoming one of the most environmentally vulnerable regions on Earth. The Gulf is naturally harsh even without human activity. Extreme heat, high salinity, limited freshwater flow, and intense evaporation already create difficult conditions for marine life. Yet despite this environment, the waters surrounding the Strait of Hormuz still support coral reefs, fish populations, migratory birds, sea turtles, and delicate coastal ecosystems adapted carefully over thousands of years. Now those ecosystems face enormous pressure. Every day, countless oil tankers, cargo ships, naval vessels, and industrial operations pass through the strait carrying fuel, chemicals, and cargo across one of the busiest maritime corridors on Earth. The scale of traffic alone creates constant environmental risk. One major accident could change everything. An oil spill in the Strait of Hormuz would spread rapidly through the Gulf's confined waters, damaging coastlines, fisheries, coral reefs, and marine habitats across multiple countries simultaneously. Because the Gulf exchanges water slowly with the open ocean, pollution can remain trapped for long periods. The fear of catastrophe never fully disappears. Tankers crossing the strait carry enormous volumes of crude oil through narrow shipping lanes already crowded with military patrols, fishing boats, and commercial traffic. Navigational mistakes, mechanical failures, storms, or geopolitical conflict could trigger environmental disaster within hours. History already revealed how vulnerable the region can become. During periods of military conflict in the Gulf, damaged ships released oil into the sea while burning facilities filled the atmosphere with smoke and toxic pollution. Blackened coastlines and contaminated water became symbols of how quickly environmental destruction could spread through the region. Even during peaceful periods, smaller spills and industrial pollution continue affecting the ecosystem quietly. Ports, refineries, desalination plants, shipping operations, and coastal construction place constant stress on marine environments already struggling against extreme natural conditions. The Gulf supports modern civilization while absorbing the environmental cost of that dependence. The sea itself feels increasingly fragile. Fishermen across parts of the region report changing fish populations, declining catches, and warming waters affecting traditional livelihoods connected to the Gulf for generations. Coral reefs suffer from rising temperatures, while pollution damages habitats supporting marine biodiversity. Climate change intensifies every existing problem. Temperatures across the Gulf region continue rising while heat waves become more extreme and prolonged. Some scientists already describe parts of the Gulf as approaching the physical limits of human heat tolerance during summer months. The water is warming too. Marine ecosystems adapted to difficult conditions now face temperatures threatening coral reefs and species survival across the region. Combined with industrial pressure, the environmental balance grows increasingly unstable. Freshwater scarcity adds another layer of danger. Many Gulf countries depend heavily on desalination plants converting seawater into drinking water. If major pollution affected coastal waters near these facilities, millions of people could face immediate consequences affecting water supplies and public health. The irony feels impossible to ignore. The Gulf powers global civilization through oil exports while simultaneously facing environmental risks connected directly to fossil fuel dependence and industrial expansion. The very resources creating wealth and strategic importance also contribute to ecological vulnerability. And still, the beauty remains astonishing. At sunrise, the sea glows beneath soft golden light, while seabirds circle above quiet coastlines and fishing boats drift across calm water. Coral reefs beneath the surface still support life, despite growing pressure from pollution and warming temperatures. In isolated coastal areas, nature continues resisting. Sea turtles nest on remote beaches, while migratory birds cross the Gulf during seasonal journeys between continents. Hidden mangrove forests survive along certain shorelines, providing shelter for fish, birds, and marine ecosystems adapted carefully to this difficult environment. But these fragile habitats exist beside enormous industrial infrastructure. Oil terminals stretch across coastlines, while refineries burn through the night and giant ships continue crossing the strait endlessly beneath the desert heat. Few places reveal the collision between nature and industrial civilization so clearly. At night, the environmental contrast becomes even more haunting. Stars reflect faintly above dark water, while industrial flames glow along the horizon, beside shipping lanes filled with tankers carrying fuel, powering distant cities across the planet. The silence of the desert surrounds one of humanity's greatest energy systems and one of its greatest environmental contradictions. The tension between survival and exploitation shapes everything here. Coastal communities still depend on fishing, while nations depend on oil exports, and the world depends on uninterrupted shipping through Hormuz. Environmental protection becomes extraordinarily difficult when global economic systems rely so heavily on the same waters under threat. Yet despite the danger, life continues adapting. Fishermen still launch boats before dawn, while workers maintain ports, sailors cross the Gulf, and marine life survives beneath waters carrying the pressure of modern civilization itself. Perhaps that is what makes the Strait of Hormuz feel so emotionally complex. It is beautiful yet vulnerable, ancient yet industrialized, quiet yet globally significant. A place where nature, geopolitics, economics, and survival all collide inside one narrow waterway connecting the modern world together. And surrounding this fragile corridor are cities and ports unlike anywhere else on Earth. Futuristic skylines rising beside ancient coastlines, while global trade, wealth, and cultural contrasts reshape life along the edge of the Gulf itself. Along the shores surrounding the Strait of Hormuz, two completely different worlds seem to exist side by side. On one side, futuristic skylines rise from the desert with glass towers, luxury hotels, artificial islands, and ports glowing through the night like visions from the future. On the other, ancient coastal cities continue carrying the atmosphere of old maritime civilizations shaped by trade, fishing, and survival beside the Gulf for centuries. Together, these cities and ports form one of the most important economic corridors on Earth, where global commerce, oil wealth, tradition, and geopolitics collide beneath the harsh desert sky. The first thing that strikes many travelers is the contrast. Within a single day, it becomes possible to move from ultra-modern financial districts filled with skyscrapers and luxury cars to ancient bazaars where merchants still trade spices, textiles, and handmade goods much like they did generations ago. Few regions on Earth transform so dramatically over such short distances. The city of Dubai represents perhaps the most famous symbol of this transformation. Rising from the desert beside the Gulf, Dubai became one of the world's most recognizable modern cities within only a few decades. Giant towers dominate the skyline while highways, luxury resorts, ports, and artificial islands stretch across landscapes that once supported small fishing and pearl diving communities. At night, the city feels almost unreal. Glass skyscrapers glow above the coastline while endless traffic moves beneath neon lights, and luxury yachts drift through marinas surrounded by enormous hotels. The atmosphere feels futuristic, yet the Gulf remains at the center of everything. Because Dubai's rise depended heavily on maritime trade and regional energy wealth connected directly to the Strait of Hormuz, its ports became vital gateways linking Asia, the Middle East, Europe, and Africa, while cargo ships crossing Hormuz continue feeding the city's economy daily. Further south lies Muscat, where the atmosphere changes completely. Unlike the towering skyline of Dubai, Muscat feels quieter, older, and deeply connected to the surrounding mountains and sea. White buildings stretch along the coastline beneath rugged cliffs, while traditional architecture reflects centuries of maritime history and Omani seafaring culture. The city carries a calmer rhythm. Fishing boats still return to harbors beside modern ports, while old forts overlook the Gulf exactly as they did during earlier centuries of trade and naval conflict. Muscat feels less focused on spectacle and more connected to the historical soul of the region. Then there is Bandar Abbas, one of the most strategically important cities near the Strait of Hormuz. The atmosphere here feels entirely different again. Industrial ports, military presence, crowded markets, fishing activity, and desert heat combine into a city shaped directly by the strategic importance of the strait itself. Cargo ships, naval vessels, and ferries move constantly through surrounding waters, while mountains rise sharply beyond the coastline. Bandar Abbas feels intense. The heat presses heavily against the city, while port cranes dominate the waterfront and military infrastructure reminds visitors constantly of the geopolitical importance surrounding the region. And yet ordinary life continues everywhere. Markets remain crowded while fishermen repair nets near the harbor, and families gather along the waterfront during cooler evening hours beneath warm Gulf winds. The ports surrounding the Strait of Hormuz never truly sleep. Cargo terminals operate day and night, loading oil, containers, industrial goods, food supplies, vehicles, and materials crossing between continents. Massive cranes move continuously, while ships arrive from across the world carrying products connecting the global economy together. Standing near these ports reveals the scale of modern trade clearly. Container ships tower above the docks, while endless stacks of cargo create industrial landscapes stretching across the coastline beneath desert mountains and intense sunlight. Workers from many different countries live throughout these port cities. Engineers, sailors, laborers, traders, and technicians from Asia, Africa, Europe, and the Middle East all contribute to the enormous maritime network surrounding the Gulf. The result creates cities shaped by extraordinary cultural diversity despite the harsh environment. At the same time, ancient traditions remain visible. Calls to prayer echo through old neighborhoods, while traditional markets continue operating beside luxury shopping centers and modern financial districts. The past never fully disappears here, even beneath rapid modernization. Food also reflects the crossroads nature of the region. Spices from India, Persian influences, Arab cuisine, seafood traditions, and international cultures all blend together inside restaurants, markets, and homes throughout Gulf cities connected to Hormuz. Then there is the psychological atmosphere surrounding these urban centers. Every city near the strait understands its dependence on maritime stability. Oil exports, shipping traffic, trade routes, and global markets shape daily economic life constantly. News about regional tension immediately affects business, shipping schedules, tourism, and public anxiety. Military presence remains visible as well. Warships appear offshore while surveillance systems monitor shipping lanes, and aircraft occasionally cross the skies above glittering skylines and industrial ports. The beauty of these cities exists beside permanent geopolitical pressure. At sunset, the Gulf becomes breathtaking. Golden light reflects across skyscrapers, mosques, ports, mountains, and shipping lanes, while giant vessels move silently toward the narrow entrance of the Strait of Hormuz. The mixture of natural beauty and industrial power feels overwhelming. Then night transforms the coastline completely. Dubai glows like a futuristic metropolis, while Muscat grows quieter beneath mountain shadows, and Bandar Abbas continues operating beneath the lights of one of the world's most strategic maritime corridors. The cities surrounding Hormuz reveal the full complexity of the region itself. Ancient, yet modern. Beautiful, yet tense. Wealthy, yet vulnerable. Globalized, yet deeply shaped by local history and culture. And beyond the ports, skylines, shipping lanes, and political rivalries remains one final question. Why does this narrow waterway continue holding such enormous power over the modern world, and what happens if the fragile balance surrounding the Strait of Hormuz is ever broken? There are places in the world whose importance can barely be measured by geography alone. The Strait of Hormuz is one of them. On a map, it appears small, only a narrow strip of water between desert coastlines and rugged mountains. But in reality, This fragile passage connects the modern world together in ways most people never fully see. Every day, the energy powering cities, transportation systems, industries, and economies flows through these waters beneath the shadow of military tension, environmental risk, and political uncertainty. The Strait of Hormuz is beautiful, dangerous, ancient, and deeply fragile all at once. A place where the stability of global civilization quietly depends on a narrow channel between sea and desert. By the end of this journey, the strait no longer feels like a distant geopolitical headline. It becomes something far more human and emotional. A place where fishermen still launch wooden boats before sunrise while giant oil tankers cross the horizon, carrying resources powering entire continents. A place where ancient trade routes survive beside advanced military systems and futuristic skylines rising from some of the harshest landscapes on Earth. Few regions reveal the contradictions of the modern world so clearly. The Strait of Hormuz represents globalization, wealth, technology, and industrial power. Yet it also exposes vulnerability, environmental pressure, political rivalry, and dependence hidden beneath modern civilization itself. Because despite all human progress, the world still depends heavily on physical geography. One narrow waterway continues shaping fuel prices, international trade, economic stability, and geopolitical strategy for nations across the planet. Millions of people living far from the Gulf remain connected to Hormuz without ever realizing it. And perhaps that is what feels most unsettling. Modern civilization often appears enormous and unstoppable, yet so much of it depends on fragile systems concentrated in surprisingly vulnerable places. The Strait of Hormuz reminds the world how interconnected everything truly became. The beauty of the region makes this reality even more striking. Desert mountains rise above calm blue water, while ancient islands glow beneath red sunsets and ships move silently through narrow channels shaped by thousands of years of maritime history. At moments, the strait feels peaceful enough to forget the tension surrounding it completely. Then reality returns. Warships appear on the horizon. Fighter jets cross the skies. Oil terminals burn through the night while surveillance systems monitor every movement across the water. The atmosphere constantly shifts between calm beauty and geopolitical anxiety. Yet life continues despite the uncertainty. Families still live beside these coastlines. Sailors still navigate the Gulf. Dock workers continue loading cargo, while fishermen adapt to changing seas and rising industrial pressure. Human survival remains tied to the rhythms of the water, exactly as it was centuries ago. The past still breathes strongly here. Ancient Persian traders once crossed these waters carrying silk, spices, and pearls between civilizations, long before oil transformed the Gulf into the center of global energy systems. Old forts still overlook the coastline while traditional maritime culture survives beneath modern industry. History layered itself upon history. Empires fought for control of the strait. Colonial powers built fortresses above the sea. Oil reshaped entire nations, while military rivalry transformed the region into one of the world's most heavily monitored waterways. And now the future itself feels uncertain. Climate change threatens marine ecosystems already struggling against pollution and industrial expansion. Rising temperatures push the environment toward dangerous extremes, while geopolitical tension continues shaping daily life across the region. The environmental contradiction feels especially powerful. The same oil exports moving through Hormuz helped build the modern industrial world, while also contributing to the climate pressures now threatening parts of the Gulf, with increasingly severe heat and ecological instability. Nature itself seems caught in conflict with human ambition. Coral reefs survive beneath shipping lanes crowded with giant tankers. Sea turtles nest on isolated beaches beneath skies crossed by military aircraft. Fishing communities endure beside industrial ports fueling the global economy. Few places contain such extraordinary contrasts. Ancient traditions and futuristic cities. Natural beauty and industrial infrastructure. Silence and tension. Wealth and vulnerability. The Strait of Hormuz feels less like a single location and more like a mirror reflecting the modern world itself. At sunset, the emotional weight of the region becomes impossible to ignore. Golden light spreads across the sea while ships continue moving steadily through the narrow passage connecting east and west, north and south, energy producers and consumers, prosperity and risk. Then darkness slowly covers the Gulf. Oil terminals glow beside the coastline, while distant tankers cross black water beneath desert stars, and warm wind drifts through silent mountains, watching over one of the world's most fragile strategic lifelines. The ships never stop moving. Even at midnight, engines continue humming across the sea, carrying fuel, cargo, and economic survival toward nations far beyond the horizon. The modern world keeps functioning because these waters remain open. But the fragility remains constant. One crisis, one escalation, one environmental disaster, or one political miscalculation could send consequences spreading rapidly across the planet. The balance holding the Strait of Hormuz together depends on diplomacy, restraint, cooperation, and luck more than many people realize. And perhaps that is the final truth hidden within this narrow waterway. The Strait of Hormuz is not only about oil, trade, or military strategy. It is about interdependence. It reveals how deeply connected humanity became through energy, commerce, geography, and survival itself. A fisherman in the Gulf, a sailor crossing Hormuz, a worker inside a refinery, and a driver fueling a car on another continent all become part of the same invisible system flowing through these waters. That is why the strait matters so much. Because beneath the desert heat and political tension lies one of the clearest symbols of the modern world, breathtakingly beautiful, extraordinarily powerful, and far more fragile than it first appears. As night falls across the Strait of Hormuz, the desert slowly disappears into darkness, while the sea continues carrying giant ships silently through the narrow passage between mountain and ocean. Oil tankers glow on the horizon like floating cities, while warm Gulf winds move across coastlines shaped by thousands of years of trade, survival, empire, and conflict. The modern world rarely stops to think about places like this. Yet every day, the energy fueling entire nations crosses these waters beneath the constant shadow of uncertainty. The Strait of Hormuz remains one of humanity's greatest contradictions, breathtakingly beautiful yet deeply fragile, ancient yet central to the modern industrial world, peaceful in appearance, yet surrounded by military power and geopolitical tension. For centuries, these waters connected civilizations. Persian traders, pearl divers, sailors, merchants, and empires all passed through this narrow gateway long before oil transformed the Gulf forever. Today, the ships are larger, the stakes are greater, and the world's dependence has become almost unimaginable. But the feeling remains the same. Survival here still depends on the sea. Perhaps that is what makes the Strait of Hormuz so unforgettable. It reminds us how connected humanity truly became. A fisherman beside the Gulf, a sailor crossing the strait, a worker at a refinery, and a family driving thousands of miles away are all tied together by the same fragile corridor, hidden between desert coastlines and endless horizons. And as the ships continue moving through the darkness beneath silent mountains and distant military lights, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. The Strait of Hormuz is not simply one of the world's most important waterways. It is a mirror of the modern world itself, powerful, interconnected, beautiful, and far more fragile than most people ever realize. Thanks for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed exploring Prague as much as I enjoyed guiding you through it. If you found this travel guide helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more beautiful destinations from around the world. Got a favorite spot in Prague? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, safe travels, and see you in the next video.